She thought she was untouchable. The HOA president, rich, powerful, built a $6 million villa on what she thought was her land. He let her finish it. Then he walked up to the door and claimed everything. This is the incredible story of how one black man took back what was rightfully his, with patience, strategy, and a twist no one saw coming. James Mitchell had always been a man of quiet ambition. Born in a small neighborhood in the city, he'd worked tirelessly for years. His dream was simple: to own a piece of land, a place he could call his own, where he could be free of the whispers, judgments, and constraints of the city life he had left behind. When James finally bought the plot of land, it was exactly what he had envisioned, a sprawling piece of earth on the edge of a well-to-do suburb. The land was rich with possibilities, and he planned to build a modest family home. But there was something about this neighborhood that James didn't fully understand yet: the Homeowners Association, HOA. The HOA had a reputation, not for being strict but for being ruthless. Led by its president, a woman named Clara Walden, the HOA controlled everything: the rules, the property values, the very fate of every homeowner. James didn't care much for politics. He simply wanted to build his house and live in peace. But Clara had a different vision, one that didn't include people like James. Clara Walden was a woman who knew how to wield power. She was no stranger to the wealth and influence that came with her position. For years, she had kept a tight grip on the neighborhood, using her power to manipulate the market, enforce the rules to her advantage, and keep the status quo. She wasn't just a regular HOA president. Clara was untouchable. A former real estate mogul with connections in high places, she had built an empire on the back of her neighborhood. But her latest project, a $6 million villa, was a step too far. Her vision was clear. She had been eyeing James's land for years, and with his plans to build a home there, she saw an opportunity to expand her already impressive portfolio. Clara didn't ask. She didn't negotiate. She simply decided that James's land, her land, was the perfect spot for her next project. The trouble began on a quiet Monday afternoon when James received a letter from the HOA. The letter was polite but firm. "Dear Mr. Mitchell, we've reviewed your proposed plans for construction. We regret to inform you that the current property you intend to build on has significant zoning issues that could affect the safety and value of the neighborhood. We suggest you reconsider your plans or risk fines and legal action." James was confused. He'd purchased the land legally and followed all the building codes. But the HOA had power, something he learned quickly. As the days went by, the tension between James and Clara escalated. Clara, never one to back down, made her presence known, sending inspector after inspector, raising questions about his permits, making life difficult at every step. James, however, didn't react in anger. He had his own quiet plans. He would build his house, he was determined. But Clara had something else in mind. Clara's proposal was simple: "Sell the land to me and I'll help you avoid further trouble with the HOA." James was taken aback. Clara was offering a substantial amount of money for his land, far more than he'd paid for it. But the price of giving up wasn't just financial, it was emotional. James thought long and hard. Clara wasn't someone you could just say no to. Her influence in the neighborhood was immense, but still he resisted. This land was his family's legacy. After weeks of contemplation, James agreed to sell, but under one condition: "Finish your project. Let me see what you do with it, and I'll walk away quietly. But if I'm not happy with what you've done, I'll take legal action." Clara, confident in her power, agreed without hesitation. She thought she had won. Clara's villa took shape quickly, too quickly, in fact. The project was massive, filled with opulence and extravagance. The walls were made of imported stone, the floors were marble, and every inch of the design screamed luxury. James watched as the mansion grew, day by day. He could hear the sound of hammers and drills, the workers bustling about, and Clara herself arriving in a chauffeur-driven car. She flaunted her success in front of him, sure of her position. But while Clara focused on her villa, James bided his time. He kept quiet, letting the project unfold. He had one goal: to wait for the perfect moment. Months passed and Clara's villa was almost finished. The project looked like a grand success. Clara walked through the gates every day, admiring her creation, counting the minutes until it was complete. But James wasn't done yet. He called in a team of lawyers and experts. He had studied the neighborhood's original property lines, the legal documents and the plans for the subdivision. He knew something Clara didn't. The land she had built on wasn't hers. It was his. Clara had, unknowingly, constructed her $6 million villa on land that had been legally sold to James, not as part of the deal, but as part of an unspoken understanding that the land was off-limits. He had allowed her to think she'd won, but in truth he had waited for the perfect moment to strike. James walked up to the finished villa, now an imposing monument to Clara's greed. He stood outside the gates and waited for her. Clara, seeing him there, approached with a smug grin. She thought she had already triumphed until James spoke. "I'm not just going to walk away, Clara. This land, this villa, it's all mine now." Clara's smile faltered as James revealed the legal documents that proved her villa was illegally built on his land. With one move, James had taken everything back: the land, the villa, and the power that came with it. The legal battle that followed was intense. Clara, backed by her wealth and influence, fought to keep the villa. But James had one advantage: patience. He had waited, watching her build her dream, knowing that when the time came, the law would be on his side. The media caught wind of the story, and soon Clara's reputation began to crumble. What had been an elegant victory became a public scandal. The neighborhood, once behind Clara, now turned against her. James, however, stood firm. With his land and Clara's stolen villa now in his possession, he made his final move. He sold the property for millions, gaining not just his land, but Clara's too. Clara Walden was forced to pay back the cost of the villa, the legal fees, and an undisclosed settlement. Her empire, once strong, was now in ruins. She lost her position as HOA president and was banned from ever running again. James, on the other hand, had won his battle. He had turned the tables on an unbeatable foe and reclaimed what was rightfully his. This story is a reminder that sometimes the greatest victories aren't won in the heat of battle, but in the quiet moments, the moments when you wait, bide your time, and let the world think it's all over. But in the end, it's you who takes it all back.